minutes.
I know, but we don't even have a third of the class here.
Yeah,
This morning we had exactly 15 out of 30.
So that's a good ratio for a Friday.
This ain't.
Yeah, this is
100% participation rate for the semester.
Yeah.
It's basically check
There you go.
I'm just saying, there should be some.
Like 1 point of extra credit on the exam.
One. What is
Yeah, we can't be
Man, a 1 point could be the difference between a D and a C, or a C and a D.
If you're gonna do 1 point, how about on your final grade? I'm just on an exam.
If you have perfect attendance, that will influence your final score.
Okay, well, that ship has sailed for some of us.
Well, think of it this way, because you didn't use up an absence today, you still, how many absences do you have left?
I got one.
You got 2 free absences.
Yeah, I've got one.
I got two.
I have one right, because there was that one time this last time.
Yeah, you would have.
Should I call roll?
I mean, if it makes you feel good, then.
If you really want to do it.
Do y'all want to do this, or do y'all want to leave?
I mean, personally,
Are y'all all staying in town for the for break, or are you leaving?
No,
I'm leaving
I'm
later
ready.
in like 2
Leaving.
hours.
I mean, it's up to you. But
Yeah, to be honest,
Whatever you say.
do we want to leave? Probably.
I'm here,
we do.
so I-
Well, my only thinking was this, is that if we go ahead and do this and just run through the PowerPoint slides, we'll leave as soon as we finish them, but then I'll have it on video so that I can put the video up on the YouTube channel so that it will be there for all of your slacker classmates. Although I really don't think they're gonna watch it over fall break.
the same people that are going to get that in all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other alternative is we just, I don't want to run behind, so it means that when we come back on the Monday from fall break, we've got to get through these PowerPoints in 1 hour. Right, we got to get through these in 1 hour.
Would we have like a test review on that
That would leave us 15 minutes to have a test review on Monday. For y'all.
So if we run through them today, we can have the whole time to review on Monday.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't see spending an entire class period reviewing for that short. It's pretty short. What do y'all think? What do you think, Matt?
I'm pretty much open to whatever
Yeah.
you are here.
I feel like everyone's gonna want to review this if they're not here.
Yeah. All right, well, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and run the PowerPoint.
That way we have it.
Let's do this. With our, how many people here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I figured you walked all the way over here. We might as well just go ahead and do it. So, Mr. Blocks, if you want to go ahead and start.
It's already on.
It's on.
He's ready to
Daniel,
go.
and the rest of the class, this is the PowerPoint slides for advertising regulation. You have to bear with my froggy voice. I have a chest cold.
Can classes be this small every day? I kind of like it.
This is part of High Point University's ongoing effort to be a caring, learning environment. You're all getting like special treatment. This is advertising regulation. So the PowerPoint start with the First Amendment recap, which we don't need because that's all in this commercial speech. We talked about all of this. Right. All right. So then, we've established that commercial speech is on that middle stair step, meaning the government can advertise regulation and it doesn't violate the First Amendment. Now it's interesting, so the FTC Act of 1914 is when the government started regulating advertising. And part of this, ladies, is partly your heritage. Because there was a lot, this is in the late 19th century and early 20th century, it was the golden age of magazines and journals. A lot of them were directed to women. And that's part of the reason for that was because this was when women were coming into journalism in a big way and becoming writers and editors. And so because a lot of these publications were aimed at women, it meant that a lot of advertising was aimed at women as well. And there was all sorts of weird products aimed at women. You know, if you're looking at a Sears and Roebuck catalog from the turn of the century, it would blow your mind, the things that you could buy. You could buy a chastity belt. You know what a chastity belt is? You could buy a chastity belt. You could buy this was also the age when people were starting to experiment with electricity at the beginning of the century, and all sorts of weird products, like cure dandruff with this thing that puts electricity on your head. And then there were a bunch of weird, strange devices aimed at women using electricity to cure the vapors or cure hysteria. And it was odd because they were about putting electricity in a weird place. And so anyway, it's all sorts of weird, quack things. And a big part of the impetus for regulating advertising is that people were getting injured using all of these weird products. And so a big push, women were a big part of the effort to get the government to start regulating advertising. There's a big thing. This is like the era of the medicine shows, right? And patent medicines. Patent medicines would be combinations of things. And a lot of these were directed at women too. You know, cures, the vapors would be some little drink. And what do you think was in the drink to cure hysteria? It was mostly just alcohol. It was booze, right? So you have all these Victorian ladies getting drunk, right? And but more seriously, a lot of people died. People got sick and died from a lot of these quack medicines. I mean, we're talking about an era when if somebody had a chest cold like this, they would drink a tablespoon of turpentine, right? That's how strange things were back then. So anyway, so we finally get the government steps in to start regulating advertising. Here's some language from the Act, which then tells us even today what the government is looking for is things that are unfair and things that are deceptive. Oh, important point for all you PR, advertising, marketing people, you are liable for what's in the ad. You can't just say, oh, well, we're just an advertising agency and the company that made the product is liable. No, you are liable. You are liable. You're just as responsible as the company. So again, we see language from the statute itself. And so what we're looking for with unfair, it causes or is likely to cause substantial injury. And injury doesn't mean hurt physically. It can mean that. But it could also mean injured financially. Cause you to lose money. Which is not reasonably avoided by consumers. And it's not outweighed by the benefits of the product. So we use the Orkin case as an example of unfair. So they run this special, and they say, pay $99, and we'll come to your house and we'll kill all the bugs. Sounds straightforward. So people signed up, and they paid the $99, and Orkin came to their house and sprayed. Within a month later, Orkin showed up again, and they wanted $99 more. And then a month later, Orkin showed up again, and they wanted $99 more. What they didn't make clear in the promotional was that if you signed up for the $99, it came with a 12-month contract. And you had to pay $99 every 12 months. And once you signed on the dotted line, you were in an enforceable contract with Orkin. So unfair. That's unfair. And so it caused a substantial injury, and the injury was everybody lost this money. It was not reasonably avoidable. Nowhere in the promotion did it say. So it wasn't reasonably avoidable. And it wasn't outweighed by the benefits. What if you didn't want Orkin to spray every month? Now, the Gut Buster was a product that came out in the 80s. And you were supposed to row your way to fitness. What you can't tell, this is not a bar. These are like stirrups that you put your feet in with handle. And this is a heavy-duty industrial-grade spring. And so you lean back and it stretches the spring and then you lean forward, right? And so they make all sorts of things about if you do this, you know, it's the amazing Gut Buster. Flattens your stomach, just minutes a day. The amazing Gut Buster. Tummy tightening power stretches. So, okay, so everybody paid the $29.99 and they got the amazing Gut Buster, and then what? Nothing happened. And so then, when the FTC gets then complaints, the way that FTC action starts is people complain, right? So people complain to the Better Business Bureau or in some state, and then the Attorney General in a state like North Carolina then commences action with the FTC, petitions the FTC to investigate. The FTC investigates and finds that how did the person who wrote this advertisement, how did he or she know that it can flatten your stomach in just minutes a day? How did they know that? They didn't, they just made it up. This is called this is the important word for your notes as far as glossary terms, unsubstantiated. What the FTC is looking for is unsubstantiated claims. Remember we said that claim-based advertising is the kind that will draw the attention of the government. And what they're looking for is unsubstantiated claims. So this is unfair. The company wrote all of this stuff and it had no idea whether it would do any of that. So there was the likelihood of harm or injury because people were out $29.99. The people were reasonable people. They reasonably believed it because they read it here in the ad. And the benefits of the product didn't outweigh the harm. Not only did the benefit of the products not outweigh the harm, but they literally harmed people because these were really, so this was actually ended up being another kind of suit that resulted from Gut Buster. These are cheap and made in China, right? And these are plastic things with a little plastic hook that holds this industrial grade spring. And you pull it back and you can imagine the tension, right, that's on the spring. Now imagine if you were a man and this industrial grade spring, which is now between your legs with considerable pressure on it, breaks away from those pedals, which is what started happening. And people got seriously hurt by this thing, right? But that becomes a tort claim. That's a product liability claim. So they were bad in both ways. But we're just interested in the ad part of it. See if this will work. Now we go to deceptive. And what you should know is that deceptive ad disputes are much more common because the deceptive quality of the ads is often more debatable. It's more slippery. And so we have a lot more of these types of suits. Now the way you should think about these three, we're looking for three factors. Two of them work in favor of the consumer, and the middle one works in favor of you. So if, let's say, you're the ad buster or the gut buster company, there's a representation and a mission or a practice. Now notice, you can be busted for deceptive advertising not just based on what you said in your ad, but what you didn't say. Right? A representation and a mission or a practice that is likely to mislead. Notice that you don't have to, the government doesn't have to absolutely prove that it did. It's likely to mislead. It's the net impression of the whole ad. You can't say, for instance, here's a headline. It says, here's an example we talked about in class this morning. DirecTV, the satellite company, they have a thing, they had a promotional, sign up a friend and save. And the idea was that if you have DirecTV and you sign up someone else, they're going to knock 10% off your bill. Well, wait, in tiny, tiny 4-point type, it said that you only get that discount for 1 month. But the ad gives the impression what?
But it's 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, that it's just gonna be on and on and on, right? So it's not good enough if you're the advertiser to say, yeah, but if you had just looked in this tiny print, you would have found that out. It's the net impression of the ad. The consumer is likely to be misled by the net impression of the ad. That's enough. Now here, factor 2 actually works in your favor as an advertiser, right? This protects you from dumb people. This protects you from idiots, right? This is the reasonable person standard. It's taken from tort law. It's very common. The idea is you can't be held accountable for some dumb actions by some dumb person, right? It wouldn't be reasonable.
Is that sort of like the example where now they have put caution, this crap is hot after
Right,
the
and
woman
they
said
do that
yes.
because that's important because that's called notice. It's express notice. And so recently I bought a space heater. And on the box in several places, it said caution, surface may be hot. Well, no shit, right?
As it was like the woman sued McDonald's or something because she spilled coffee.
Yes, so a very famous case, she spilled the coffee in her lap and she sued McDonald's. And that's that was a tort case. I mean, everyone makes fun of that case. She was seriously injured. She got 3rd-degree burns on her genitals. I think that would be pretty painful. And part of it turns on the idea of reasonableness, right? Yes, a reasonable person would expect coffee to be hot, but not 230 degrees. It was that hot. It was like 230 degrees, right? And so on a reasonable person basis, she was pretty reasonable to expect that the coffee wouldn't be that hot.
Well, what about the case where the woman was like driving a Winnebago and put in cruise control to go back and make a sandwich? That's not reasonable.
Right. And
But
so,
she won. That's the thing.
oh, did she?
I think.
But let's just take that in here and just say, make it more like a product. So let's say you're Con Air, you make blow dryers, and you advertise the blow dryers. You know, oh, it's a wonderful blow dryer. And the woman goes and she buys the blow dryer, and then she goes home, and she decides it would be a good idea to use the blow dryer in the bathtub. Right? So obviously, if she then tries to get the FTC to take some action against Con Air because the ad was deceptive, you know, there was a representation, omission, or practice that was likely to mislead. I guarantee you that nothing in the Con Air advertising said to use it in the bathtub. And then, again, this protects the advertiser, right? You know, you can't be held accountable for foolish or feeble-minded behavior. And then finally, we get to really the nub of the matter. This turns back to the consumer. Was the consumer influenced to buy the product because of your advertising? And that's pretty easy to answer, isn't it? Because you can just put the person on the stand and say, did you buy the product? Yes. Why did you buy the product? I saw the ad. So this is pretty easy. What are other ways that if the FTC was trying to move against some advertiser and they want to really nail this third point that people bought the product because of the advertising, what could you do? What could FTC do?
Bring in a whole bunch of people who bought it.
They could bring in a whole bunch of people. You could even do survey research. You could do a survey, a nationwide survey. You could do a focus group, like you could bring some people in and show them the advertising and get the people to interpret the advertising and say, what do you think? And that's what they do a lot in these types of cases. Focus groups, survey research, that sort of thing. Or get other, round up other people who bought the product because of the ad. All right, so we said the other day when we were talking about our target of things that draw the FTC's attention, health claims are in the middle, financial claims, and vulnerable audiences. And so we get, have you all seen all these commercials on TV? Call us today and to talk about getting a reverse mortgage. Do you know what a reverse mortgage is? It's when, like, you own the house, right, and you've got a 30-year mortgage, and let's say you've got 10 years left to pay on it. The company pays off that mortgage for you. And so in the ads, they say things like, free up cash, take a vacation, buy that fur coat you've always wanted. You know, we'll make life easy for you. What are they not saying in those ads?
You're gonna have to pay the company back.
It's even worse. It's not a loan.
They now own your house.
They now own your house. And so when you die, they get your house. Your heirs don't get the house. So grandma, who doesn't understand how any of this works, and they'll have people in the ads, like they go from the announcer to like a little old lady who looks like grandma, you know, and she says, it was so easy. They made it, Colonial Life made it easy. Now, and I get to even stay in my house. Well, yeah, for 5 more years until you croak, and then they own your house, and her children don't get to, right? So those types of ads really, really attract the attention of the FTC. It's really sick. There are all sorts of scams that they target, especially old women. So like the husband has died, and now the woman's on her own, and they scam old women all the time because, you know, maybe the woman, maybe she was always a stay-at-home mom, or she just didn't know business or finance and that sort of thing. They rip them off all the time. Just heartbreaking stories about companies through deceptive ads and promotions like this, stealing like their entire retirement savings and stuff like that. So again, that's difficult. Deceptive headlines always draw attention. Can they be remedied by accurate information in the text? What do you think? If the headline says, you know, lose 20 pounds in a week, can that be remedied by accurate information in the text? Mr. Watson, what do you think?
Well, as far as accurate information goes, some people try and put accurate information, like you said earlier, they put it in really small print where you can't read it. The headline is something, I don't want to say outrageous, but, you know, like you just said, it's something like that, yeah, very attention-getting.
Yeah.
And then the reality is in the tiny print. So technically they can say, well, we put it in there. Yeah, but you put it in there that nobody but, you know, Superman can see.
And that's not good enough. The FTC would say that's not good enough. So, yes, the answer is yes, but yes, it can be remedied by information in the ad, but it must be presented in a way.
How you display it.
And that we'll see in a minute that that's very important. So it isn't good enough just to put it in 4-point type. That's not good enough, right? But it can be remedied. What's that have you ever been looking at an ad or watching a commercial on TV and they say results might vary, right? Meaning you ain't gonna lose 20 pounds, right? Right. So they show the models who supposedly use the product and they have impossibly white teeth, right? They say whitens teeth fast. Results may vary, right? So that's called a disclosure. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there is a way to make the attention-getting headline okay, as long as you explain it in the ad. Then we said, finally, that the safest way to avoid these pitfalls is go with puffery, lifestyle type ad. You know, sell a mood, sell a brand, sell a lifestyle, don't make any claims. Puffery is like an anti-claim. It's something that cannot be proved true or false. And finally, we get to disclosures. Now, some disclosures are there because the advertiser doesn't want to get in trouble, like lose 20 pounds fast, results may vary, whatever. And then some are required to be there. What's an example of a disclosure that the government makes advertisers or companies do?
Like ingredients in the food.
So the FDA Remember we said the FTC oversees advertising, the FDA oversees packaging and labeling. They have to. I mean, they're literally, by law, they have to list certain things and they have to present it in a certain way. That's why the labels all look the same, right? Because the FDA mandates. So that's an example. What else?
All the side effects for various drugs.
Okay, a drug, if it has side effects, they must be listed. So that's a kind of disclosure. Cigarettes. The Surgeon General's warning, that's a disclosure that is mandated by the government. And so then we get to the very important 4 Ps of clear and conspicuous disclosure. So if you're asking, how does the FTC determine whether a disclosure is clear and conspicuous? They run through the 4 Ps of clear and conspicuous disclosure. So notice prominence. Is the disclosure big enough for someone to notice it and read it? So this is, Mr. Watson answers your question about the T-tiny type. Or in other words, another one about that. Well, so that's that. It has to be big enough and prominent enough that you're going to get the consumer's attention. Presentation is wording and format easy for consumers to understand. Like, what if with that reverse mortgage thing? Because they are obliged to disclose the financial risks involved. But what if the disclosure is in a bunch of like Wall Street gobbledygook that nobody understands? Or what if the disclosure about the medical thing, like for cigarettes, what if it said, may contribute to a higher incidence of melanoma, carcinoma, blah, and they only use a bunch of medical terms that regular people don't understand. And that's why it's worded the way it is on the cigarette pack. Surgeon General's warning. Smoking may cause cancer, right? Beautiful. It needs to be done in a very simple, clear way. Placement isn't where consumers will look. That's why the FDA forces the cigarette companies to put the warning right on the package. This is why, for example, like if you buy, let's say you go, I just bought some Mucinex down at CVS. Well, inside the Mucinex package, there's a little piece of paper that's all folded up, and it's got little type, and it has all of the warnings about the possible side effects. But that can't be it. Where else is it? It's on the packaging too, because this is placement. Will all consumers go in there and unfold that little roadmap and read the tiny type? No, they put some of the general warnings right on the package. And then proximity. The disclosure must be close to the claim. So for example, this is why, again, here's this rule right here is another one of those, explains what you see in here, whether you realize there's a rule for it or not. So you're watching TV and the Cialis ad comes on, right? And it's got this, kind of soft porn sounding music in the background. The couple, and they're feeling all romantic and all. And then all of a sudden, the announcer starts talking really fast. May cause diarrhea, vomiting, and internal bleeding. May cause death. I mean, they don't really want to say all that stuff on TV, right? I mean, how sexy is vomiting and internal bleeding? But they have to. They have to. They can't have the ad and then put the disclosure somewhere else, like in the package once you've got the product. The disclosure must be next to the claim. That's why if you've got a one-page magazine ad, the disclosure, they'll often stick it down at the bottom of the page. That's why a lot of times companies will buy a 2-page magazine ad and they put the disclosure at the bottom of the second page. So they have a chance to hit you with their happy message first before you see the diarrhea, vomiting, and internal bleeding on the next page. Very important, the 4 Ps of clear and conspicuous disclosure. So just a couple of real life examples to help sort of drive it home. This was a deceptive ad action. I think it also could have been unfair. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two, but just know that what the FTC is usually moving against the company for is deceptive. So in the 80s and 90s, like your parents were young and they all wanted to have fancy cars that they couldn't actually afford, they leased cars instead. And that became really popular in the late 80s and 90s. And so there were all of these zero down, drive away today, all these types of promotional ads. And so people went in and they leased these cars. And they did the drive away today, and they drove away. And then like a month later, when they got their first bill, that it was supposed to be $300 a month was their lease payment. They'd get a bill for like $1,500. Because what they didn't make clear was that there was a one-time leasing fee, right? And so then, and the government even made the companies pony up $1 million to pay all of those consumers who were injured by it. So deceptive advertising. So it was likely to cause harm. Those people were out $1,200. A reasonable person would have thought that, believe the advertisement. There was nothing in the advertisement to make you not believe it. And the benefit of having the expensive car didn't outweigh the fact that they were cheated out of $1,200. $269. Now, today you can get computers cheap, but back then, in the 90s, in the late 90s, computers were very expensive. So $269 is a real sweetheart deal for a computer. Notice that in many of these, what's at issue isn't something that was said in the ad, it's an omission. Many of these cases are about what you don't say. So let's look. 4-point type. You know how small that is? Right? I'm sitting in my office just 30 minutes ago. I'm working on a big legal history piece. And the footnotes, which are tiny, even those are 9 points. This is 4 points. You would literally have to have a magnifying glass. So what really happened was that when you signed up to get the $269 computer, they locked you into a 36-month contract for internet service from CompuServe. Does CompuServe exist anymore?
No.
Okay. So locked 36 months is a long time. That's 3 years that you're paying them, right? And the total actually is a $1,059 computer. All right, flag this word. The word free. Cool. That's kind of neat. If you say something free, it absolutely has got to be free. You cannot promise something for free and then it end up having a cost. This is a very problematic word, and you should never use it unless you absolutely 100% mean it. This, the reason that comes up a lot in FTC actions is because of the automobile industry. Guys, why do you think that this word is important to consumers with regards to your car? What do you think? Y'all probably have really new cars, and so you've never had to have a lot of mechanical work done on them. But so what ends up happening is a lot of automotive companies are busted for selling quote unquote new. But what they've done is they've gone to salvage yards and they've gotten parts off junk cars and just cleaned them up. So they get busted for that all the time. Now, obviously, if it's a false statement, that's going to be deceptive. It's this. It's that. It's implying something. My favorite one, and I have it later on. My favorite one again about cars, right? Anybody drive a Volvo? Do any of your mothers drive a Volvo? And why does your mother drive a Volvo? Or let me word it this way, why does your mother and many other mothers drive Volvos? Why? It's the mom car because room for kids, but
It's safe.
right. It's the do it for the children car. And that's not an accident. I mean, they intentionally marketed that car over the years so that Volvo, the secondary, think about like in trademark law, we talked about secondary meaning. Volvo is synonymous now with a safe car, right? Secondary meaning, the mom car, right? So we're implying that it's very safe. So they did Volvo did this game. I love this one. And I need to find it again. It's on, somebody put it on YouTube at one point. So they did an advertisement. This is a national advertising campaign. Do you know how many millions of dollars it costs to do campaigns like that? Just imagine, right? Millions and millions of dollars. And they roll out the commercials nationwide. And they did this thing. It was like they staged a test. Like it was one of these, like it was like a Consumer Reports test where they're testing products. They lined up all these cars with a Volvo in the middle, and then they took this monster truck like Gravedigger or something. Do you know what I'm talking about? Gravedigger. And they drove Gravedigger all over these cars, and Gravedigger crushed the roofs in on all the cars except the Volvo stood up to it. What's the implication of that? And the only problem was some guy down in Georgia came forward and blew the whistle on Volvo. He was a welder, and they had hired him to build a steel reinforcement frame inside the car that you couldn't see from the outside. I mean, it was just a complete lie, right? They put this on national television. He got busted. So it's this, most people, unless you're working for a sleazy company, most people don't know that they're putting a false statement in. The problem is when you're implying something. And then the other biggie, this happens all the time. You have to be careful and remember that you are just as liable, the advertiser is just as liable as the company. So if you've got some scientific research and you massage the numbers to make it look like your product is doing something extraordinary, that's really bad. That's as big as that. The example, well, I've got an example. Like if you've got a scientific study, that study, what the government is looking for is the proper fit. The study, the research that you have has to fit the claim that you're making. And then false or misleading endorsements. And by the way, all of you who do PR marketing and advertising later in the future, just know this, as a legal matter, endorsements don't mean shit. I mean, you may, just because you get, Miley Cyrus to endorse your product, that may hold some sway with the dumb people who like Miley Cyrus. But it's not going to have any kind of, legal impact at all. Celebrity endorsements, things like that, they don't mean anything. Note this. Note that well too. Ah, that's good. Gone. So you're working for a company, you're going to advertise, you're going to make some kind of health claim about your product. You have got to have the substantiation before you can launch the advertising campaign. And you need to tell your boss that. If your boss wants to make some advertising campaign and say, lose 20 pounds in a week. And then you say, hey chief, do you have substantiation for that claim? And how many sources of substantiation do you need for a health claim? Two separate independent studies. Yeah, because you got what the FTC, what you have to remember is advertising is very powerful, especially advertising on TV. And people believe stuff. People see a television ad and they believe it, right? And so the FTC is there to look out for consumers. That's what this is all about. So failure to do the substantiation before amounts to unfair or deceptive advertising, because you don't really know that it's true. And again, it's all about the consumers, all from the consumer's perspective. Right? Here's our two. We've got to have two scientific studies. And again, the scientific study that you point to needs to actually fit what you claim in your ad. And you would imagine all of these. Notice these are all about the rigor, the scientific rigor of the study. But then the list over here is actually just as important. So as you are going out and you're starting a career and you're new in advertising, PR, marketing, you need to just know that all of this doesn't amount to a hill of beans, right? You can't do things. A lot of times people will say that, well, we're offering a money back guarantee, so that should get us off the hook. No, it doesn't get you off the hook, right? You can't say, as seen in the New York Times, as seen in Reader's Digest, as seen in the National Enquirer. Doesn't matter. You can't have like the old lady who says, I took it and I feel better. It doesn't matter. So just know in your advertising, PR, marketing careers, none of this amounts to that. As far as the FTC is concerned, when they're looking at some of these immaterial, who cares, we don't care, they don't care. Expert and organizational endorsements. Now, they will look at these and make some judgment about whether the endorsement is from a legitimate and reputable organization. I mean, if it's like the American Medical Association, that could hold some sway. If you do not disclose, like when Jamie Lee Curtis goes on TV and advertises Activia, is she doing it because she loves yogurt? No, she's doing it because they gave her $1 million, right? On the advertisements, do they say that they gave her $1 million? No, they don't. And so, whenever you use celebrity endorsements and you're not even disclosing the material connections, that doesn't look good in the eyes of the FTC. Again, testimonials do not get you off the hook. Product endorsements by consumers or celebrities. This is all that counts. This is all that counts. So just know that. Because you never know, you could be in a work situation where you're working on some ad campaign and you start to question the accuracy of it. You may have a boss who didn't take my media law class, and your boss is a dummy. I've worked for dummies before. It happens sometimes, and so you should be sensitive to. Hey, you should raise your hand and say, "Hey, boss, I don't think we should do this." So this is an example of manipulating statistics. So let's look at this together. 4 out of 5 pediatricians recommend Gerber. Right? That's 80%. Wow. That Gerber baby food must be really good if 80% of pediatricians endorse it. But they got busted for deceptive advertising. Why is it deceptive? Why is the ad deceptive? Think about it. Mr. Watson.
Well, one, because you don't know what the small print says to start with. I mean, there's a star beside.
Okay, so there's a product disclosure here. Now, does the product disclosure meet the 4 P's of clear and present? Clear and conspicuous disclosure?
No, because it's not big enough.
So you're gonna hit it on,
Red.
prominence. It's not prominent enough, they've tried to hide it.
And, even proximity. 'cause
I
it's
think
actually-
they got it on proximity.
Okay, well, I mean, I didn't know, because it was, below the,
And the presentation is in plain English, so I think they got it on presentation too.
but you could still go.
You would go for, the prominence.
Prominence,
It's not big
because-
enough, they've tried to hide it, so let's investigate, shall we? A 1994 contemporary pediatrics recommendation study found that 88% of pediatricians who recommend baby food recommend cooking. So, why is that deceptive?
It's not technically 80%, it's 88% of pediatricians who recommend baby food to start with.
Oh, so it's not 88% of all pediatricians, it's 88% of a subset of pediatricians, only the ones who recommend baby food. And would you guys like to guess how many pediatricians recommend baby food? Only 50% of pediatricians recommend baby food.
So it's really more like 40%.
Yeah, it's
of-
very small.
Of all.
Right. Pediatricians recommend breastfeeding, right? So it's only 4 out of 5, it's only 88% of the 50%. So what?
Like 40%.
40%
Of the overall.
of the overall. Who loves them some KFC?
I used to love
So they were trying to advertise, they said the 2 KFC breasts of chicken have less fat than a BK Whopper. They have slightly total fat and saturated fat than a Whopper, but they have more than 3 times the triglycerides and cholesterol, more than twice the sodium, and more total calories. Once you say healthy, you have to give the full picture. You have to substantiate what healthy means. Remember we talked the other day about those red flag words: healthy, low fat, low cal, light, natural, organic. Anybody working in the food industry, you've got to be very careful about these things. I like this one. This was a real slippery one. They had if you don't believe that something light can taste delicious, then try Klondike Light. It's 93% fat-free. What do you think about that? Now, put your evil corporation cap on. How could you make a claim like that, but it be deceptive? Klondike bar, it's 93% fat-free.
Well, before that, there's the word light. Which
Yeah.
didn't they recently put a huge thing on light foods?
Yeah,
Light.
yeah. And this is an old one. But notice they say that it's light. What's the definition of L-I-T-E?
Nothing.
I don't know. It's nothing. But so it's 93% fat-free, and they got busted for deceptive advertising. How could you be really diabolical and say that it's 93% fat-free, and it technically be true, but not completely true?
93% is fat-free, and the rest of it's like super fat heavy.
But how would you do that? A Klondike bar has
Mostly ice cream.
ice cream here and chocolate here. All they're counting is the milk for the vanilla ice cream. They're using 3%, or let's see, it's 93% fat free. That sounds like about skim milk or something, right? So they're using a low fat, low cal milk, but then there's all the fat that's in the chocolate. Clever. Here's my favorite. Look at it, grave digger. See that? Yeah, and so that ended up being litigated all the way to the Supreme Court. And Chief Justice Earl Warren says the guidelines for television demonstrations are as follows. The television demonstration may use any mock-up model or any material which pretends to be something else without disclosing this fact to the audience. Any visual or demonstration of a product must be absolutely accurate and truthful.
So is that why some ads say like professional driver close course in some of those car commercials?
Maybe. Because what are they doing? They're telling you the truth about what you're actually seeing here. You're not seeing just a regular driver doing this, you're seeing something else.
Okay.
And what?
I was just thinking about someone watching one of those commercials and thinking they could drive like that. It'd be like a
Right.
Neo going, I know Kung Fu in the Matrix.
Right. So, but it may really be like a professional driver who's a stunt driver who's doing all that stuff. Yeah, so it has to be, you have to be, and I know y'all, do y'all like Stouffer's? I love this one. Of all the things we package, our 34 lean cuisine entrees with freshest ingredients, ripest vegetables, perfect blend. Some things we skip on: calories, fat, sodium. With less than 300 calories, controlled fat, and only less than 1 gram of sodium per entree, we make good sense taste great. What's so bad about that? Anybody ever eat the Stouffer mac and cheese? That's like their biggest seller. Anybody ever want to have a heart attack? You should eat the Stouffer mac and cheese. What's in the mac and cheese that will cause you to have a heart attack? Salt. How much salt do you figure is in one of those lean cuisine microwaves?
I was gonna say there's a little star next to the 1 gram of sodium.
Okay, well, look at what the ad says. And always less than 1 gram of sodium per entree. Isn't that really positive? It's always less than a gram. Isn't that positive? And so what does that say? It's 1,000 freaking milligrams, right? We're not going to be happy about that.
Oh, that is sneaky.
That is very sneaky. Sodium is measured in milligrams, right? And so to have 1,000 milligrams in a little lean cuisine is like asking for a heart attack. Less than 1 gram, and then they do tell you the truth. They do tell you the truth down here in the fine print.
You can't actually eat it without that.
Yeah.
And after you've already gotten it, it's like the lowest conceivable amount.
But that is really sneaky, the way that they worded in that really happy way. Like, oh boy, it's less than 1,000, less than 1 gram. And then they tell you the truth down here. Yeah, you gotta stay away from these things. They're really exciting. Oh, this was really cool. So they said, this is Norelco. This was one of the early water filters when this was just becoming popular. And so it filters out, it says that it can remove up to 90% of chlorine, organic waste, and trihalomethanes. I'm glad, because I don't want to drink trihalomethanes. Now here's the thing. They were not busted on the claim, the representation. They were busted on an admission, and you're not going to believe what the admission was. This is all true. They had scientific evidence showing that the filter really did do this. What they failed to mention was that the plastic and glue in the product itself leached cancer-causing chemicals into the water. And they forgot to tell anybody about that. Oops. Again, this is that, I mean, that's just pure diabolical, right? Now this is where it gets, it seems, you see ads like this all the time, and it seems innocent enough, but it isn't. So they're trying to say that, you know, this is Wonder Bread is a do-it-for-the-children product. If you get the kids to eat Wonder Bread, it has calcium, so it's going to help their brains. Without eating Wonder Bread, your kids can be, well, a little slow. I mean, now what mother wants their child to be a little slow, right? So they're really tapping into people's emotions here. Because it has, what they're trying to say is because it has calcium in it, it will improve their brain function and memory. What they're doing is they're misusing science. They're taking science, general claims in science that calcium helps your brain. Okay, that's true. But then they're trying to directly link their product just because there's some tiny amount of calcium. And so again, it's an unsubstantiated claim. They were just taking general statements about calcium and applying it to their product. All right, so here then is the nuts and bolts of how this works when you're out in your professional career. The FTC, we have different levels of action going from the least serious action to very serious, you're going to go to jail. And so when it starts out, like let's say you're the Wonder Bread people and you're advertising about that, the FTC doesn't come in and just like, beat you over the head. They give you a lot of chances to do right. So first of all, whatever industry you end up working in, you need to know that the FTC issues general guidelines periodically about your industry. So if you're working for, like one of my students at State last semester landed a really good job in the PR department for Butterball Turkey. That was funny because talk about not wanting to do PR for a company. Don't you remember what happened last year about Butterball Turkey? The videos that went viral on YouTube of them kicking and abusing the turkeys, right? What a PR disaster. So she starts her job, and of course there are industry guidelines specifically for the poultry industry, right? And so you need to familiarize yourself with whatever the FTC guidelines are for your industry. Then every once in a while, let's say there's some sort of issue comes up and everyone's wondering, oh God, what about this? What about this? The FTC will specifically address issues that come up in the news. And so for example, when Michelle Obama became First Lady and she started pushing all this stuff about childhood obesity, the FTC, they already have a guideline for marketing to food to children, but then they also put out this policy statement, right? Sort of addressing certain concerns that were in the news at the time that people were wondering about. Then, even more serious, let's say there's some sort of problem going on. And this is what happened with the childhood obesity. They issue they're going to make a rule. They're going to make new rules, right? An NPRO, a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. So the FTC will send out an NPRO, a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, and they'll say, we have got to tackle this problem of advertising directed at children. Here are the rules we're proposing, and they proposed a whole series of rules. Then they have to have public hearings about it. They also have to have a public comment period, a 90-day public comment period. So all the industry people put their feedback in, and then they have hearings. And then they'll issue the new rules, which they did with the childhood obesity stuff. And those rules carry the weight of law. Then the next step on our seriousness is when, let's say, okay, they've issued rules about marketing to children, and you come out with the new campaign, and it's directed at children, and you're promising them all a pony if they will buy a hamburger, right? So, or you're saying, let's use a health claim. You're saying that, eat a McDonald's cheeseburger and you'll do better in school. Then now this is getting serious. If the FTC comes to you and says, prove it, and they demand substantiation for some sort of product, right? Now it's getting serious. This is the hint to you that something bad is about to happen to you and your company. Right? Now, at that point, you can make everything happy and you can make all the problems go away. Where the FTC says, stop saying that. And you say, okay. So you sign a consent agreement. Many, I would say, in fact, I would use the word, I would say, the majority of these disputes with the FTC end right here. Because people don't want it to get more serious. So this, you could say here, this is where the Activia case ended. The FTC, we had gotten to the substantiation part where the FTC demanded substantiation from Activia. They were claiming that it would keep your digestive tract healthy. they couldn't come up with the proper substantiation. And so the FTC said, you must stop saying that. You must not run those ads anymore. And so they entered into a consent agreement with the FTC and said, okay, we won't. And they pulled that entire national campaign, lost millions of dollars. One very clever student in the morning class said, well, what if they didn't care? And I said, what do you mean? I mean, they spent millions of dollars on those Jamie Lee Curtis ads, and then they had to pull them off. And she said, she's so clever. She said, what if they knew that that was going to happen and they didn't care? Because they had run those ads for 6 months and everybody had gotten the message that Activia is good for you. And then they pulled the ads, and she said they probably already had the new ads ready to go. And she could be right. You never know. You put a claim out there, it runs on TV for 3 months and millions of people see it, then the FTC tells you to stop making that claim, and you just say, okay. So they run the new ads that don't have the claim in it. Clever. But anyway, so that's where the Activia case ended. And they ended amicably. Now let's say Activia decided, no, we really believe this is true, we're going to keep doing it. Now they get the cease and desist order from the FTC. And this is the signal that legal action is about to be taken against your company. Right? These agencies, like the FTC, has quasi-legislative power. Think about it. It acts like a legislator. It acts like Congress. It can make a rule. But it also has quasi-judicial power. It can adjudicate the case. And it can decide who wins. And it acts like it holds something that is kind of like a trial. And then it issues its court order. It either tells you to stop doing something or to start doing something. They sometimes can tell you to start doing something. What was that, y'all, ladies? There was a birth control company a couple of years ago that was trying to be a real hit, and it was advertising like 17, and it was really going for a young demographic. And they made claims like, I know what it was. They said that not only does it act as a birth control pill, but it clears up acne. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Yes, it was yes. Yes, it was yes. So not only did they tell Yaz to stop making those claims, they made Yaz put full-page advertisements in all the magazines that they had been advertising in, practically apologizing to customers and clarifying that there was no proven link between the birth control pill and acne. So they, like I said, these are two good examples of equals. They told them to stop, and they told them to start doing something. Start doing something. Okay. So now that's still not the most serious level. All right, so then it gets really serious, and the FTC doesn't just give you a cease and desist letter. They actually go to a federal court, and they get a federal court to issue an injunction against you. That's very serious. And then let's say you still won't stop your ads, making your claims. Money. Your company's going to lose money. They're going to issue a stiff penalty against your company. It could run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, if it's really serious, and this is mostly about health claims, you could go to jail. You can go to jail. Do y'all remember the trend about a year ago, and it was all about women getting plastic surgery to make their butts bigger? Do you remember that? To get their butts bigger? What do you call that?
What'd you call it? I know.
Butt augmentation. surgery. And so for whatever reason, some people decided that, big butts are beautiful. Well, so there was this clinic in Florida, and they were advertising this procedure, right? And of course, they're advertising that it's safe, it's effective. You'll feel more glamorous with a bigger butt. Did y'all read about this? So they had all these ads, right? And so it didn't turn out to be safe at all, because there was a woman doctor who was running this clinic, and she was injecting cement into women's butts, right? That was serious. So that obviously led to other criminal type charges, because she was literally hurting these people. But there was an FTC component to this, because they had advertised, this clinic had advertised and lured all of these people, all of these unsuspecting women in. And she was injecting all sorts of weird things into their butts. Right?
Yeah,
So there were other criminal types. You remember that?
That's a advertising ideologies.
So there was a FTC component to it, but then of course there was a criminal component, because they were hurting people. So here's your professional advertising PR checklist. And don't forget, you can't imply something. Substantiate all claims. What do I mean by this? Literal truthfulness is not a defense.
If they're saying something is true, but implying something
Well, it's like the boards, sodium things. It's true, but it comes across
Right.
as something much.
That's a good example for that. That's a good example for that. Stouffer case. It's literally true that it's only 1,000 grams, but that's deceptive. Make sure all claims are substantiated. And this is the gut buster example. They had not actually found out if that exerciser actually did what it said. Determine all claims expressed and implied. Could we use this as an example here? Implied of the ones we did. The Kentucky Fried Chicken one. When they said it had less fat, but it only had less of a certain kind of fat, but it had more of another kind of fat, is that it? And so you assume that it's all the fat. Omission, you could do the Norelco water filter. They didn't tell people that it had Norelco. As an example, they didn't tell people about the leaching of the cancer-causing chemical. If disclosures are necessary, they must be clear and conspicuous, equals the 4 P's of clear and conspicuous disclosure. The other thing, one other handy thing to remember about the FTC, right? Before you assume that the FTC is just a mean government agency, you should put this in your notes. I don't remember whether they were anywhere, if it was anywhere here. Advisory opinions are very, very helpful. So let's say you're working in the PR or advertising setting, and your company you've worked for months on this new campaign for a product, and it's making some sort of claims, and you're just a little nervous about it. You can actually go to the FTC and ask the FTC for an advisory opinion. You give them the whole ad campaign and say, would you please take a look at this and see, does this seem like we're on safe footing? And the FCC will tell you, yes, we think that this is fine, or no, we think you need to make the disclosure more conspicuous or something like that. So you can actually, you and your company and your ad agency, you can actually ask the FTC to help you design a campaign so that it won't run afoul of the law.
So they're giving you a million chances to make it.
A lot. A lot. But really, if you just follow the checklist, you'll be fine. All right, so good. I'm glad we made it through the PowerPoints. All you people who left early, you can watch this over fall break. Everybody have a good fall break.